Hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Okay, I think the host can feature me if I think.
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Okay, let me on my video now. My video is on.
Yes, sir, we can see you as well.
Thank you very much. Nice coming on this platform to share few things. Um, I want to share briefly on, as time will permit, um, acquiring knowledge to select appropriate statistical tools for um, our research work, especially in the area of educational assessment. I look through the topic and I check the meaning of educational assessment, want to tell the assembly here that the scope expected of any research in the area of educational assessment goes beyond mere educational testing. So all other research works that we can carry out to improve outcome, to improve skill, they are all under the purview of educational assessment. So I will like to share my screen. So thank you. Thank you very much for being here. So the topic I will uh, talk to is acquiring knowledge for choice of appropriate statistics in providing answers to research questions and in educational assessment. Uh, First of all, I want us to look at the scope of educational assessment. And it's all about the process of documenting and using empirical data on the knowledge, skill, attitude, and beliefs to refine programs and improve student learning. Without wasting time, I want to connect three principal components of research to have better understanding. And the work was actually put together by a student of mine and myself to make the work quite richer. I have a very strong uh, skill in the area of quantitative to have all-encompassing presentation. I brought someone in who is quite skillful in qualitative so as to have enriching presentation. Uh, the three components are put together. We have research questions one side, then we equally have the science, then we now have the statistical tool. So in between we have measurements, but measurements will be aligned to the science, because if we fail to link those components together, we may not be able to help ourselves, because you may have a topic or two topics that may look alike, but by the time we bring in design, the directions we follow to accomplish the expected tasks in those research works might quite different. So that's why we cannot shy away. Not to waste our time, looking at research design. What is it all about? It's all about the plan and the structure of an investigation conceived so as to obtain answers to research questions. So by the time we go into the presentation proper, what I meant by bringing in research design to get appropriate statistical tool will be so clear to us. Um, for plan, we talk about the overall scheme or program of the research from the beginning. What has the researcher penciled down that he will accomplish or she will accomplish, the way data will be collected, the way Will it be quantitative? Will it be qualitative? At what point? Will it be taken at the beginning, or will it be taken at interval in the area, or when it comes to time series approach, or will it be once and for all kind of data collection? Then we have the other one, which is structure. On the other hand, where we are talking about the framework of the entire program. So we will need that. I will take it one after the other, but before then, I want us to look at statistical tools. While talking about statistics, they are the method used to combine different variables in a research question or hypothesis to be able to give appropriate answer. And though that might not be the direct area of my presentation today, but I think I should drop this with the people in the house today. I discovered the wrong practice when people will like to combine variables at measurement level. What do I mean? Someone is looking at the impact or the attitude on effect or the attitude on achievement. You see some people composing items like my attitude to mathematics can make me pass my mathematics well. My attitude to mathematics can make me score good marks. You see them combining two variables within an item. So it's quite not appropriate. The expected is that the two variables are independently measured. Then you use appropriate statistical tools to link the two measures. Then coming to research design now, we have basically, we have what we call experimental types. We have which can be quantitative. Then we have various types of experimental types. I'll be fast because of my time. So when coming to experimental design, there is no way you can say you carry out an experimental design and you are talking qualitative. No. So as long as someone has made up his mind as a researcher to go experimental, then what should come to mind should be quantitative, because there should be a measure to justify the impact of the experiment. So we have various designs under experimental study, and that will guide us a lot. You now said I'm bringing three components: what the research question has specified, the design that the person has chosen, and the statistical tool that will match the design chosen. To start with, we have a situation where a researcher will go for one group post-test only. Many of us, we castigate that kind of the design, but whether we like it or not, we find ourselves falling victim of using that kind of research. For example, you are brought into a situation where your institution negotiated with an establishment to carry out a research, and you are told to write a report over that activity, but you are not brought in to get baseline data before the commencement of the activity. So what would you do? So it's one group, and you can't tell your organization that because I want to have a research nature, I will now go and get a comparable group so as to use the robust design. Say, no, give us whatsoever you have. So in that approach, you have only one measure from only one group, and you make do with that. So when you have that, the variable can be like mathematics achievement test that was measured one shot. So, and we talk of a scale. The scale used to measure the variable will be of importance, because when we are talking about specifications that will match in statistical to when we get there, you know that the scale used for measurement is of importance. Okay. Then we now talk about the statistical tool that will match that kind of a design, and look a scenario where the researcher just focused on a group, treated them. Probably you used a particular teaching method to teach them, and you want to see whether we have intra. This time around, we cannot be talking of inter comparison, but we can have intra comparison. That is within group variation. So the type of statistical tool that one will go for is one sample t-test. There is a particular t-test that will tell you whether scores obtained by the group of focus, they are quite close, that you don't have significant difference among the measures. So look at it, one group post-test only. But if something should happen that there's an improvement in that design, I tell you that statistical tool will not be of importance again. Okay, let's move. We have another scenario where there's an improvement over what we had in scenario one. You know, scenario one is one shot, but we have another scenario where you have one group and you are privileged to take a baseline measure before you now administer your post-test. The story must change because there's an improvement over what you have. So the variable might be something like science attitude. Before you have the treatment, you give them a scale to gauge what the attitude is before you move on. And by the time you move on to give the treatment, you now repeat the measure again to see the gap that will exist between when they came in and thereafter. So at that level, something must happen. You know, for you to make some comparison, the scale of measurement can be parallel scale, parallel in the sense that the scale used to take the pre-test measure and the scale used to take the post-test measure, there must not be a variance. So meaning that they are parallel. So if they are parallel, the scale of measurement is expected to be continuous. And the statistical tool that will be expected at that level, though experimental, must be a paired sample t-test. You can see an improvement. The introduction of pre-test alone to my design, even though I'm facing only one group, has altered the choice of my statistical tool. And that's how it continues. Let's see how it goes. We are still on experimental type. We are still on quantitative. We have another scenario where there's an improvement over what we had before. This time around, we have two groups and you have post-test only. So no privilege to gauge their entry level, but you have a group that is comparable to the target group. That's an advantage on its own. That's an advantage on its own, provided some other things. In fact, there is a school of thought that ANCOVA will not be of significance if a researcher had the capacity to make the two groups of the group or the focus group, the target groups, the two target groups, if you can make them highly comparable to the point that you can say the two groups are equivalent. They tell you, no, you may not need to bother about the entry level. But the question is, what measure are you going to use to justify their equivalence? That's why the advocacy for pretest is always strong, because it keeps the researcher at a safe side. So the variable might be gender, perception about governance, it can be. Then we now have two groups. Maybe you treated people and you educate them. For example, look at what we are passing through. The way many of us are talking about some things might be the level of education we have. So a person may take it upon himself to carry out an intervention, a program that will educate people. It can be a radio program. So when you have that, and the two groups are probably selected from the same community, so you remember the two groups uh, be assigned status. Assigned status. What do I mean by assigned status? Whether you are in group 1 or 2 has not positioned you in an advantage situation. So that means that assign one to you originally does not mean that you are good or bad. That assign one to the other does not mean it's good or bad. So that means the measure of measuring the status will just be nominal. Then gender can be something like a moderator variable anyway. Then the perception about governance will not be a continuous variable. So when you have this, mind you, we don't have pretest measure, but we have an advantage of having a comparable group. So at other class, they call it a control group. So when you have that scenario, the statistical tool that you can be thinking about will be two samples t-test or independent t-test. So at that level, you can compare and you look at the improvements. Then we have another scenario when you have two groups. So look, the way we are building on our design, and that is why a researcher can build on the design and also link that design to the scale of measurement, and thereafter now pick appropriate statistical tool. Look at the improvement. You know, we started with one group, no pretest. We moved to, though one group, an improvement of giving them baseline. We moved to a situation where we try as much as possible to get two groups that are comparable, and we try to take the post-test measures on the two groups. Then we have another group where you have two groups that you pre-measured. Then thereafter, after your intervention, you also measure the, so one of them can be educational level and income. So if you read much, will you get more money? So if you have two groups that you try to make to be equivalent in a way, probably you use a form of matching. It can be matching by equating participants. It can be matching by frequency table. It can be matching by holding the variable constant. It can be matching by building extraneous variables into the, it doesn't matter any matching approach that you use. What we are saying is you try to match subjects into groups in such a way that the two groups are comparable. Then you now compare their income based on that. So then at that level, you see the educational level being measured in ordinary way, then income possibly measured in continuous way. So at that level, you can attempt to use ANCOVA, analysis of covariance. So we have a long way to go. I'll try to rush it. So the next one is still experimental level, and we have another one which is matched participants. At that level, you can look at teaching method and achievements in economics. So when we say matched participant, it's an attempt. You know, you can just get two groups in an arbitrary way. The result of such work may not fly, especially when such work needs to be presented before experts in design. It will not fly because the researcher may not have all what it takes to defend himself or herself when you don't match participants. However, the argument might be, how do you match two individuals that will be exactly the same? But effort directed towards matching them at least will bring an improvement into the study. So the teaching methods can be nominal, the achievements in economics can be continuous. Then ANCOVA might be a suspected tool because of possibility of having pre-measure and post-measure. Nevertheless, we have a new direction, and I think that is the way we should be going now. Gone are the days when a researcher will just go for an achievement test and we just cumulate. So this is my achievement test in possibly in economics or in physics or in English language, and it just like one BAM measure, people will say, no, why are you going that way? We are now having new uh, instrument development strategies that you can use, so much that you are measuring a big variable, but you can break those variables just into components. Like, what do I mean? I want to carry out a research and my teaching subject is mathematics. A teaching method that you are trying to experiment on may support geometry at variance to maybe something like algebra. But by the time we cumulate these course together, we lose the beauty. We lose the beauty. So there is a way you can load subcomponents of a big variable in a model. So more that when you use Mancover, you want to see whether if you break in parts, what impact will the treatment or the experimental treatment, what impact will the treatment have on subcomponents. Then as a whole, because we'll not be talking of achievements in this, as a whole, what impact will it have? So that beauty is a Mancover, but all depends on the strength of the researcher anyway, the ability he or she has to manage such kind of robust statistics. Then we have another one we call randomized. The truth of the matter is, within the setting of a behavioral research, which majority of us find ourselves, it's not quite easy to randomize human beings because we are human beings. And then what we are, you can place a beaker on a table in January. If there is no human agent that will move that beaker from that table, it will remain there till the end of the year in December. But when it comes to uh, human beings, you don't. That's why if you are talking of randomization, take for example in a class, you randomly assign a set of students to two groups. You now decided to take a group to one place to teach, and another place you ask them to stay in a place. What do you think has happened to them? For sure, they will share ideas. The possibility of asking a question, my friend, you know we are friends. What were you exposed to where you are taken to? So they will get information. So that kind of information may blur the efficacy of the treatment that you are administering on the two groups. So that's what we are saying. That it's not possible. But we are saying if it is possible to randomize, fine. That's the expected. So meaning that you have a class and you are randomly assign them to different groups and you are able to take group and you try as much as possible to prepare yourself to answer the question, how did you handle contamination? Because if you don't have a method to answer and to defend yourself in the area of contamination, we ask you, don't go that way. But if you have all what it takes to randomize and you can block them from diffusing ideas, then we say, okay, go for a randomized design and that'll be fine. And that'll be a perfect one, so to say. So the measure can be ordinal, and ordinal in the sense that depending on what you are using, if the literature has already calibrated the levels of the treatment you are using, that one is better than the other. Take for example now, mastery learning and conventional method, you from all indication, from the component you find the mastery learning strategy, you will know that it's quite better even in outlook. For example, where you are making students to have opportunities for remediation and re-remediation, how will you tell me that that will not be better than just talk to board kind of a method. So then the dependent variable can be continuous. So at that level, depending on the strength you have, if you have the strength to take care of only one omnibus measure of achievement, go for Vancouver. So that means you are dealing with only one dependent variable. But if you have the stamina to use the modern method to factor into the overall variable, which might be latent, then there are these new approaches now where you build in structural equation modeling into this common research work that we have been doing. So to the point that to what extent are those components of my dependent measure really contributing to that measure? So that is the direction of reasoning now. So instead of measuring dependent variable as an entity achievement in mathematics, you now measure them as components, and you can use Vancouver to handle that. So what we are saying in essence is the approach to how you assign your statistical tool to the task at hand is a function of how skillful you are. So, but if it is someone that is just relying on this old method of you just measure and you cumulate and it's just one measure, so the person may just restrict himself to only uncover and go. So let's look at this scenario and look at what we can bring out of it. In a research endeavor, the researcher has two groups of participants from which only one group received treatment. Meanwhile, during the rush, because of time constraints, he forgot to determine the baseline of their English language proficiency before administering the treatment. So thereafter, the person now gave achievements in English language as post-test. So we ask ourselves, which design is appropriate for this situation? So from what we have discussed, I'm a teacher. I will not just want to be talking and be talking and be talking. Since we still have the privilege of uh, looking at ourselves from the chart point of view, so I will go to the chat section and see what the response of my uh, my listeners, what their responses will be, so that I will cease to be newscaster and be a teacher indeed. So that's a scenario that is posed before us. Let's take the time to view. Then I will stop sharing. Then I will go to the chat section to see what our responses will be. At least I should have feedback so that I will not just be talking and be talking and be talking. So I think we've taken time to read the scenario. In the research endeavor, the researcher has two groups of participants from which only one group received treatment. Meanwhile, during the rush, because of time constraint, they forgot to determine the baseline of their English language and proficiency before administering the treatment, and I gave English language achievement test. So what will it be? What will it be? The uh, appropriate statistics. I think I've seen some responses already. So let me see. Okay, not yet, no much yet. What I'm seeing on the chat, just wish fruitful meeting tonight. Oh, my sister is here. Dr. Chinyere Kwaba. Nice having you again here. Okay. So we have Dr. Ijoma, Professor Ijoma Kwara. Good evening all. So if you can hear me, thank you. Yes, I know my sister will respond. Two group posters only. Hey, I clap for you. I know I know you. You will respond. I think Dr. Agi also is here. So nice having you. So that's the way we do it in some other class. Let's do it here too. So let's have 2 more people responding. So which design is appropriate to handle this scenario? Thumb up for Dr. Iaiiea. I'm a teacher. Should I assume there's only Dr. Iaiiea in the house? No, don't believe. Don't believe. Stand still. Stand still. Please, I want participants to encourage me, I beg. Not responding might make me to be discouraged. I want to thank my sister for responding promptly. Okay, you are telling me that you are, okay, someone has sent something. Your question once more. I think you can see I'm sharing my screen. I've not stopped sharing. The scenario is on the board. I said in the research endeavor, I think you can read the research has 2 groups of participants from which only one group received treatment. Meanwhile, during the rush, because of time constraint, he forgot to determine the baseline of their English language proficiency, and the post-test measure is on English language. So we design, okay, and we had the response already, 2 group post-test only. So one more, okay. Because of our time, let's move. But I will be glad if we try to respond to some of these questions. That will make us to be involving. Okay. So 2 group post-test only this time. So can you see my sister Chinyere got it so perfectly, so perfectly, so perfectly. Okay. So what are the likely variables in the study? So that's another question I'm still responding. What are likely variables that we can see? So let's have more. Likely variables. Okay, someone said post-test only design. Good, good, good. So we have another question already. What are the likely variables in the study? Likely variable in the study. Likely variable in the study. Likely variable in the study. Dr. Maybe Professor Florence Chukwuka, thank you for being here and responding to. Likewise, Professor Dr. Ijeoma Okpara can see. Now the next question, what are the likely variables in the study? Likely variables in the study. And possibly what scales? Can we ask what scale? Variables and scales that can be used to measure them. Because if you are not knowledgeable in scales, designs, and you may not be able to choose appropriate statistical tools. I'm waiting. What are the likely variables in the study? So the scenario is still there. I think we can view the scenario. Thank you. The scale is interval for which one? Inherently, there are 2 variables, at least 2 variables. So I want us to be specific. Variable 1, what scale? Variable 2, what scale? What trials? I'm waiting, I'm waiting, I'm waiting. I'm a teacher. It's not that much talking I will make here today, because but how much gains people go home with. Even if I'm stopped here and people can pick 1 or 2 things and apply. Thank you. I have Professor or Dr. Kafri Etsy, English language proficiency. Thank you, which is continuous. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But inherently, That's why when people are entering data, they have a challenge. I remember a student of mine who had a challenge, experimental study like this scenario, went to the field and brought in the responses of the student, but could not run the analysis because of inability to isolate a variable that is inherently in this scenario. So I'm waiting for someone that will point out that inherent variable. And without pointing out that inherent variable, you may not be able to go far. So I'm waiting for the first person that will isolate that inherent variable. I agree with you. English language proficiency continuous. Okay. My sister is here again. English language proficiency and achievement in English, fine. Nominal and continuous. Yes, I agree. But something is still inherent. So, okay, I think I should let you know that there's a variable called treatment here. Is a variable on its own that is operating at two levels. Since we have two groups, definitely the treatment that each of the two groups will be exposed to will differ. So at that point, you can say it's another variable. And if you don't have that knowledge, you may not be able to enter your data. Because if you enter your data, you don't have a variable called treatment being coded in your data, you go nowhere. You cannot analyze at all. Okay. So let's see how we go. So the intervention and the efficiency, sorry, I've moderated that one. So there are answers on the treatment, which is an intervention. I've already changed this to achieve English language proficiency. So I forgot to adjust that. Don't bear with me. So what is the scale of measurements? I think we have already answered that, nominal interval. Then we move on. What is the appropriate statistical tool? Okay, so let's now move. What is the appropriate statistical tool that can be used? What is the appropriate statistical tool that can be used? Let's answer. Let's answer. Appropriate statistical tool. Okay, treatment and post-test. Okay, that's the Professor Dr. Iaiiea Okpara. Correct. So two inherent variable is the post-test measure, which is English language measure, and treatment. Correct. Perfectly. Perfectly. Now the next question is, what now that we have known the measurements. Look at where we started. We started with the design. We move to the list of variables. We move to the scale appropriate to measure the two variables. Then the next screen, what is the appropriate statistical tool that this researcher can go for? So I'm still waiting. So good. Someone said ANOVA. ANOVA Florence Chukwuka. That is a professor, maybe a professor, doctor, I don't know. Okay, ANOVA is a trial, Let's see whether we are going to have other participants that will validate the response. Let's see whether there be others that will facilitate. I hope my host is recording so that some other people can benefit too from our interaction. Okay, ANOVA. Do we have two more people to validate or to send their own different response? Thank you. So I call you Auntie Florette for being prompt. We have limited time to go. Or even if you are going to gain this, I think we can stop and go home. At least we've learned. Rather than casting news that nobody picked anything. So no other person is responding in my house. So I think the only active, thank you. Okay. So Auntie Joma said independent test and ANOVA. Okay. And Chire Kwaba said it's better use man cover. Okay. Then Dr. Agi or Professor Agi said independent test. Okay, I think because of looking at the design, looking at the two group and post-test measure only, I think if anybody should use independent test, nobody will accuse that person of using a wrong statistical tool. So I think independent test will be the appropriate, oh sorry, the appropriate two sample t-test or independent t-test might be the appropriate is true to use. So the another we are moving, we still have a form of research designs, which is experimental test, which is mixed. Then with that, we have design also, and we have various design that we match. We have variables of interest as well. We have scale of measurement. We have type of tools, statistical tool that can go for that. So I know we are moving gradually, and this is a new dimension. But in the past, when someone has gone for mixed method, it's sufficient to say the mixed method approach will be adopted for this study, but there is now a new dimension. So if you contact me, a senior colleague of ours, Professor Falaye wrote a book that treated mixed method. So Professor Falaye is a lecturer in the Institute of Education, University of Ibadan. I know Dr. Iaiiea has a copy, I'm so sure. So she can tell you more about the usefulness of that book. So you see video design. So if you are just writing a research work and say my method, the under research design, you just say the designs of research is just a mixed method. You have not said anything. You have not said anything. So we have many of them, and we just open. You know, I told you that we put this thing together by a student of mine, myself, who is, that one is knowledgeable in mixed method and qualitative. So I will flag some of these designs to you. It's sufficient for us to go back and read more and read more, so as to use thematic and all exploratory. Explanatory is a design at their end. This is another design, position slash preeminence. Many of us might be hearing all those one for the first time. They have their own way of handling it. So this is another, by extension, is the type experimental type, which is a mixed. So you have another one they call concurrent convergence. So if you are not conversant with that, you can ask my number from Dr. Iaiiea, the president and the founder of this association that brought us together. You may get my number, and you can gain access to that textbook. Concurrent convergence. So you have the way of measuring the variable, and you have the statistical tool that can be used. We have another one, the consequential. You have a lot of them. We have many of them in quantitative plan, so they have so many also in qualitative angle. Okay, I think I have like 8 minutes more. I will take non-experimental types, which is quantitative in nature. I don't want to leave anything without letting us know. We have the descriptive survey, it's a design where you are checking the teaching attitude, field service, the highest qualifications, and all of that. So we can check by ordinal if it's the level of teaching attitude. And when you remove level, is another ball game which can be continuous. Then you can go for frequency and percentages to handle your research. But descriptive survey, I want to stress it at this point that it doesn't end frequency and percentages. It can incorporate even correlational if you plan your study very well. It can equally take all these uh, uh, comparison tools also as descriptive design. Then we have expo factor. Sorry for the spelling. So we have midday meal and enrollment. So there was a time I think I should share my experience with you. I was holding a wrong notion about ex post facto. And I believe many of us are not holding to the same wrong notion. I just thought that ex post facto is comparable to causal comparative. So, but along the line, there was a platform where we discussed extensively, and eminence in research convinced me that no, they might not be. Gender can cause a difference. So when you are comparing, a gender can be a causer to to variation in a particular measure, but you cannot say because you say the effect of gender on something something, you now say you are doing ex post facto. No, you can say you are doing causal comparative, but not ex post facto. So ex post facto may fall under no, causal comparative sometimes may fall under ex post facto, but you cannot say all ex post factors can take care of causal comparative. So they now and I went to read. For you to say you are doing ex post facto, the variable which is independent variable must be manipulative in nature. Must be manipulative in nature. And manipulative in nature, but you don't wish to manipulate because of the nature. Let me give you an example. If someone is a drunkard, there's no way drinking will not affect his behavior or her behavior. So, and you want to tell the effect of alcohol intake on certain behavior, maybe in commitment, in home commitment. You want to see the home commitment of a man or a sample of men. You want to see their own commitment, and you hypothesized that alcohol intake can affect the home commitment of men or husbands. So you realize that you cannot say because you want to test the effect of alcohol intake, you now say, okay, 20 men come here. I want to give you alcohol so that I will see the way you behave to your family members. That will not be ethical. That will not be ethical. But naturally, you find some people drinking. So you can isolate them who are drunkards that are known within the community and who are known to not to be drunkard. You can get two groups from there and you compare their commitment to their family members. So that'd be a good one. So you discover that alcohol intake is a variable that can be manipulated, but inherently it's not expected of a researcher to manipulate such variables. So when you find yourself handling such kind of research, then we say you go for ex post facto, but not someone that is checking effect of gender. You are saying you are doing ex post facto. That will not just be. You are just comparing whether gender will be a causal to something something. So the normal, so two way over depending on the number of variables involved. If you have more than one independent variables that are measures to be categorical, whether nominal or ordinal, then you have the dependent variable being interval. Then I say, okay. So you can use for two-way line over. One way line over also can go anyway, depending on the number of independent variable you are loading into your design. So non-experimental study, we have quantitative, you have this, we have correlational type. I think majority of us, we are conversant with that. When you desire to just establish relationship, and that's all. But I need to drop it at this point. When you have the causal in mind, don't go near correlational, because correlational does not translate to causal. So if you pick two variables at random, you will be surprised that they correlate. Say for example now, you can sample 20 men from in a particular environment, and you go to another environment to pick 20 women. You measure the income of 20 men selected from somewhere, and you measure the happiness status of the 20 women, and you match them arbitrarily, not mindful of whether the person you are matching, the husband and wife. When you run that kind of analysis, do you know there might be high correlation between the two? But the reality is, how will you explain that? That the income of a man that doesn't know the woman is now being a causer. So relationship can just occur anyhow, but relationship does not translate to a causer. So the two measures can be interval. Time will fail me. You may have, and I think I need to drop this one with us. You have so many forms of correlation. You may have uh, when you have a correlation, nominal measure with ordinal measure with ordinal measure, nominal measure with ordinal measure, ordinal measures, nominal. So there are so many types. So when we want to discuss this another ball game that can be given to anybody to come and educate us on various forms of correlation analysis that we can run. And the multiple regression or different forms can also fall under this. So time will fail us to take more scenario because it's already 9 o'clock already. So let me just run the scenario. So which design is appropriate? Okay, let me take this and close the shop for the day. After the rigorous literature review, a researcher conceived that level of economic growth in a country is a function of quantity of its export capacity. Therefore, he gathered secondary data for 100 countries on the variables. As an expert, guide him on the following issues. Which design is appropriate for this situation? After rigorous literature review, a researcher conceived that the level of economic growth in a country is a function of quantity of its exports. That's, sorry for the typo error, export capacity. Therefore, it gathers secondary data for 100 countries, and on the variables, as an expert, guide him on the following issues. What design is appropriate for this situation? So can we try? Sorry, I know we want to sleep. Okay, let's make some trials. Okay, let me just run through. So correlational will be okay. So what are the variables in the study? Economic growth, export quantity. What is the scale of measurement? Talk of ratio. What is the appropriate statistical tool? We talk of regression. And that we have this also. We may have qualitative, pure qualitative. That's another ball game. Yeah, we have phenomenology. So the experience can fall under that categories, and the scale can be in form of words, can be in form of audio, can be in form of picture, and the tool to apply might be thematic. So I know my limitation. I must confess to you, I'm not a pro person. So my student joined me to put this together. Tola Oyeniran. So he's the one that knows all those terminology, but the interested person can go and broaden their experience on those designs. But they are wonderful designs. For those that are interested in qualitative, I develop my quantitative strengths and I know my limits. So I'm trying to go mixed method. So I'm learning to. So, but they have another design they call narrative. So when you have stories, and the scale can be words, audio, picture, video, and the two can be thematic. You have another case study, so you can give examples. Then words, audio, pictures, and videos can be scale, can have thematic. Then you have done experimental of qualitative also. Many. I told you of that book. You just need to have that book. So the design can be grounded theory design. So so the intent might be to derive theory. The scale can be word, audio, pictures, and that. Then it can be thematic. So I think I should stop here, not to bother us too much. Thank you so much for listening to me. I think I will stop sharing my video so that we can see our faces. Thank you so much. I'm back with everybody. I appreciate. Thank you. Have a blessed night. Thank you, Dr. Iaiiea, for this privilege of sharing with this wonderful group. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much. I clap for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Just before you go, let's have some people who have questions throw their questions at you if there are any questions. Is that okay by you, sir? I can't hear you anymore, sir. Hello?
Unmute myself. Okay, they can ask their questions.
Okay, so please, if you have a question to ask him, please use the raise up the hand feature or you drop your question in the chat.
Okay.
We are so grateful. The session was so interactive and we really appreciate that.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Okay. So if there are questions, please let's have them in before we round up for today. Oh, okay.
Hello. Okay. I can't see any question from the chat platform. I saw comments.
There is a question already, sir. Someone is asking how close are the two groups to each other.
Your voice is not coming out so loudly, ma'am.
Okay, I said there is a question here. Someone is asking how close are the two groups to each other. I think
How close?
the earlier exercise we gave.
Can I have you again, ma'am?
Are the two groups to each other? Okay, one question. How close are the two groups to each other? Did you hear that? Hello,
I
sir.
can't hear you, ma'am.
Oh, okay. The question is actually in the chat, so I don't know if you can see the chat since you can't hear me clearly. Okay. Hello, sir. Can't even hear him again, too. Hello, sir. Did you get the question?
I didn't, ma'am.
Okay, the question is, how close are the two groups to each other? How close are the two groups to each other?
Okay. Are you talking about the scenario I posed?
I guess that's the premise of the question.
Thank you very much. That was what I tried to explain, that the two groups without pretest measure, the design is usually classified under 40 design. 40 in the sense that the first question an expert will ask such a researcher that will go for two groups without pretest is how comparable are the two groups and how equivalent are the two groups. So as much as possible, one will advise a researcher to introduce pretest. Even though you are having two groups, one will still ask them to go for pretest design, so that at the beginning they will test their level of equivalence before you proceed to use ANOVA, if you dare wish to use ANOVA, and also to proceed to use ANCOVA, at least to check the partial effect of the entry strength. So for someone to use mere facial look to determine how close the two groups are without data, that would be practically impossible for any researcher. I think the best way to test how close the two groups how the two groups, how close the two groups is a function of whether you introduce, it might not even be the dependent variable of interest. You can check their equivalent in some other psychological traits like intelligence. So you can use intelligence measure to check whether they are equivalent. So that might be allowed. But the best way to run out of all those challenges is to introduce pretest measure from the outset.
All right, thank you so much,
I don't know whether I've answered the question.
Let me call out the, it was from Curfew Etsy. All right, I guess he heard that, and I believe he has been cleared. Thank you so much once again, sir. We really appreciate taking out time to be with us to share knowledge. We are so grateful. Thank you so much. And everyone that has stayed with us this far, we are grateful you've stayed with us. Thank you so much. And I believe you've learned quite a number of things. Just a quick announcement. I've been making this and I'm going to make it again, that there is an extension in the date for submission of abstracts. So abstracts will still be collected till the 30th of this month. So if you've not been able to submit yours earlier due to the initial deadline, the deadline has been shifted till the 30th of September. So please do well to forward your abstracts to the email that has been assigned to doing that, iaiiea.org. Thank you so much. And remember that the annual conference will be holding virtually this year. So please prepare to attend, and I'm sure you will be enlightened. Just before we bring today's edition to a close, we'll have a brief. Okay, I can see someone raising hand. I don't know if it's for you before we pray. You have to unmute yourself, please. Can you hear me, ma? Okay. I'm not sure she can hear me. Please go ahead. Seems you've unmuted. Do you have a question, ma? All right, I think we can just round up and pray. Let's pray together. Father, we thank you because of tonight's edition of the seminar. Thank you for everyone that has participated, and thank you for the facilitator you've used for us. Lord, we pray that you will help us, that all this knowledge is not just lie fallow, they will not be wasted, but you help us that we will consistently and with determination make good use of this knowledge, and it will make our world a better place. Thank you, Father, because you've answered us. In Jesus' name we are free.
Amen. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone, for participating.
Thank you, ma.
Okay.
Thank you, ma.
I think she finally did ask a question on the chat, and I really don't know. She's asking, is it only when we are doing correlation design that we use interval scale? So I don't know if our facilitator can just briefly probably drop a message for as many that will still be here.
Okay. I will check the chat, the question. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.